After a 2-week break, we have a Saturday of international rugby fixtures to review before former England prop, women's rugby trailblazer and recent retiree Shaunagh Brown drops in to chat about her career and what lies beyond it. We are back after a little fortnight break. A couple of the columnists in Brendan and Nicker were on holiday and still are. So it is myself and Chewy who will be reviewing the events of the weekend before Shaunagh Brown joins us in about 20 minutes to talk about her retirement and what her life is going to look like now. How are you, Chewy?
Well, I'm looking forward to a podcast where the quintessence of rugby common sense will absolutely come to the fore because the other half-wits are not here. So we don't have to waste our time listening to complete nonsense. No, it's very good. It was an interesting weekend, actually, in its disparate ways. And I would have watched even more rugby than I watched at the weekend had all the rugby not been on 453 different platforms, not all of which I can access or afford or have the interest to download. I mean, I would certainly have watched the French semi-final, which had a great finish, apparently. The guy from Stade Francais hit the post with what would have been a match-saving penalty, I think, taken into extra time with the last kick of the game. So I would love to watch those, but I have not the faintest idea how you can access French club rugby. So I don't.
It was quite diluted, wasn't it, in terms of everything being all over the place. Let's talk about rugby because I would have loved to watch more as well. And like you say, some of it is just completely inaccessible. So for those hoping for a bit of analysis of the Super Rugby final, for example, I'm not going to be able to provide it. You may be able to. But let's start with the game that was on Rugby Pass TV at 6:50 a.m. on Saturday morning. I hope you set your alarm. I certainly did. It was a weird game because, I mean, we'll speak about the stakes of it or the lack of rather later on. But the first 20 minutes, certainly, Japan were running England off the park and they only had 3 points to show for it. And then scoreboard efficiency told, but I'm not sure it was a 50-point performance from England.
No, probably not. I had a feeling almost right from the kickoff, even when Japan were the only side who had the ball for quite long periods of time, and a scrum half they found a guy there. As somebody who can spark that Japanese style that we've all come to love and respect, that all action, very, very high tempo, multi-passing, multi-phase style. How Michael Leach, still at the age of 112, still manages to participate in such a style of rugby is a mystery that passeth all understanding. But yes, they did look bright, and they did a lot of things well, but they didn't do things well at the crux points. And once England really challenged them at the breakdown, really challenged them at the maul, that's where the Japanese ran out of steam. And so I think there was an air of predictability about it, even though Japan, for 75% of what they were trying to do, did it well.
Saito, his name was, the scrum half. I don't think there's a quicker pass in world rugby, to be fair. He was
terrific
all the way from the breakdown. Absolutely incredibly.
Terrific. So, he was like Lee Dixon with a pass. I mean, insofar, I'm not being rude about Lee, who I thought was really good. But he was getting to every ruck quickly. He was not hesitating. There wasn't much of a step around his passing. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, and that's the Eddie Jones style, isn't it? You know, I mean, people do sort of follow the route map a little bit. Eddie Jones and Brian Ashton are at the opposite ends of this. Eddie has a game plan. Brian didn't like game plans. Brian liked people making decisions on the hoof. Eddie doesn't mind you making decisions on the hoof as long as it's the right decision. If it's the wrong decision, you will never make another decision again in your life because he'll drop you. So that's the difference between these guys. But this bloke was very, very good. And you do need that kind of the mechanics of the Japanese game depend on a scrum half being as quick as he is. Absolutely tremendous. I thought it was a sensational performance, especially in the first half. Yeah.
I think for England, my view is, and I know that's the view of a lot of people, we're likely to see an unchanged or very close to unchanged between that starting 15 and the 15 that'll take the field in. I think it's Dunedin is the first test, isn't it? Who stood out for you? Who put their name forward? Obviously, the obvious ones are probably Marcus Smith, Cunningham South, Underhill. Anyone else really?
Well, on the Marcus Smith subject, and I see there's been some traffic about, Marcus Smith may have played all right against the Japanese, but Finn Smith has to play against the All Blacks. I mean, it's been in some of the papers.
Yeah.
I mean, a game against Japan is made for Marcus Smith because they are going to leave you places to run in.
Yeah.
And Marcus Smith is terrific at that. I thought he was good. I think he probably will start against the All Blacks because I just think he's that half a yard ahead of Finn Smith in Steve Borthwick's thinking. He's been around longer. He has more international experience. So I get that. That's absolutely fine. Underhill was on a serious hot streak. I mean, fair play to him. For somebody who a lot of us thought I'd have seen the best of or seen the last of quite a time ago. I doff my cap. I mean, I think he's playing outstandingly well, and I think Chandler Cunningham South looks to me. I mean, he's a work in progress, to use the old cliche, but my goodness, if that curve is not broken by injury or some peculiar selection decision, or just he falls off his level for whatever reason, he's absolutely got the world at his feet. I mean, he's an absolutely tremendous blindside in the making. I've no doubts about him whatsoever.
Do you think he would make a good 8?
I don't really see it. It depends what kind of 8 you want. I mean,
yeah,
I never really liked, even at his best, I wasn't the biggest nut of Billy Vunipola. I'm quite suspicious. You know my views on this, really. I'm quite suspicious of size for size's sake.
yeah,
I'm quite suspicious of a number 8 who's just going to truck it up with it. I mean, Billy Vunipola had a lot of skills, don't get me wrong. He didn't have as many as Mako, mind you, but he had a lot of skills. But we didn't see them that often. He was slow on the turn quite often. So defensively, I think there were questions to be asked about Billy. But he was used, not his fault, but he was used in a sort of blunderbussy kind of style, a truck it up style. It's the old Tuolangi argument, all that stuff. So I prefer a number 8 to be able to play some football, which hence my one man bring back Zach. Can you bring back Zach if he wasn't there in the first place? I don't know. I like football. I like football in number 8s. I think the great number 8s always, virtually always, Wayne Shelford is an exception. But the great number 8s have generally been footballing 8s, I think. Lawrence Dallaglio had a lot of football in him. He changed his game as the injuries kicked in and he had the bulk up and he played a completely different game around the World Cup time in 2003 to what we'd seen in the 90s when he was playing 6 or 7. But he had a fair bit of football about him. And I like that idea. So I like the idea also of the number 6 going through the traditional number 6, dirty work, hard yakka, hard labour role. And Cunningham's has got all the size and all the dynamism to do that with added value because he's a tremendous athlete.
Yeah. Do you think there's a correlation? I mean, we speak about Billy and compare him to Ben Earl as number 8s. They couldn't be more different. Ben Earl is probably probably the most dynamic, certainly the fastest number 8 in the world, with the exception of Vincent, the Italian. Billy obviously was size beat size. You almost back in 2016, 2017 revolved your entire team around him, but do you think that then had a knock-on effect on how England played? And as a result, and I only mentioned Cunningham South at 8 because our friend Richard, the rugby analyst, he said he'd love to see Cunningham South given a run at 8, which I find quite an intriguing prospect. But do you think it does have a knock-on effect on how your team plays? Because an 8 is your footballing forward, is your principal ball carrier in a lot of teams. But Ben Earl running a 11.5 second 100 meter or 12 second 100 meter, whatever he might be able to do, and him being able to run a hard line and add a little bit of footwork and potentially an offload in a way that Billy would obviously go route one. It does have that effect on how your 10 operates and how your 9 operates.
Yeah, England have been size obsessed for for too long, really. Seriously size obsessed, and you can go back to my old pass my saddle and I'll mount my hobby horse. It goes back to the Sam Burgess theory of England rugby.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was picked for his size. He wasn't picked for his passing, was he? And he's sure as eggs wasn't picked for his kicking game. He was picked for his size and his tackling and all that kind of stuff. So there, I've always been suspicious of the size trumps all theory. However, I'm happy to take the criticism that, well, the South Africans win World Cups on the basis of precisely that, really. But they're helped by the ridiculous laws around substitutions. I'd like to see Oxen and Che play 80 minutes, or Franz Malherbe play 80 minutes, or Mbanambi play 80 minutes. That would be funny. Because if you're still within touching distance of them after 65 minutes and they're blowing out their rear ends,
yeah.
Let's see what happens then. They may not win quite so many tight ones under those circumstances, but that's another argument completely. I think Cunningham South can do most things. He's not at the moment. He's not the footballer for me that Don Brandt is, or Zach Mercer is, or Kieran Reid was. Let's say, or going right back, your Zinzans and your Murray Mexteds, those great number 8s. And the best number 8 of all was the bloke who lost about 3,000 games of international rugby. I mean, Parise was extraordinary. And yet you need a genuine footballer somewhere in your back row, or else you're pretty easy to play against, I think. And, Parise incorporated all of those things. He had size and he had all the footballing skills and he had his line out, etc., etc., etc. If he'd been a New Zealander, he would probably have 100 caps as an All Black. We might never have heard of Kieran Reid. So I quite like the idea of number 8s in that footballing role. Even Dean Richards was a classic example. How good a footballer was Dean? He had no pace. He was a bit of a magnet for the ball, but he was a fantastic footballer. And by footballer, I just don't mean the closed skills. I mean your rugby instincts of being in the right place at the right time. It's that game understanding. Those are the number 8s I like. Whether Cunningham South has that, that jury is out. But we know what he does have, and the things we've seen from him at the moment are astonishingly exciting. I think he's a player of great potential, and 6 in that slightly more restricted role, I think suits him at this current stage of development.
I tell you what, given that, and I'm adding the label of probably 2 of the most pivotal back rows of the last 6-7 years for England in Billy Vunipola and Courtney Lawes, given that both of them have gone out of the picture, the back row is incredibly well stocked.
Oh,
at the moment,
yeah,
probably our most well stocked unit of all of them.
Oh, I mean, when you think that when Stuart Lancaster took over in 2012, I have a feeling England's first game under Stuart was in Scotland, and everyone assumed England were going to lose, and actually they won the game up there by hook or by crook. But I think Chris Robshaw won his second cap.
Yeah,
I got a feeling Phil Dowson played.
That sort of chopping and changing went on in the sort of Tom Wood, Chris Robshaw.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure out whether James Haskell was an 8, a 7, or a 6 because he could play all 3. That went on, and you couldn't necessarily lump players in there and just say, actually, you know what, they're going to put in a shift. And obviously having Underhill back is great. A little pop quiz question: how old is Sam Underhill?
I would put him at 29. And that's a complete guess.
He's 27.
Is he really?
He's 27.
He's had a hard life.
He's had
a hard. Look, I remember Richard Hill, the great England flanker, and as good a blindside actually as I saw in the professional era. He spotted Underhill quite young when Underhill was playing down in Wales. And I had a quiet word with Richard at some rugby writers' dinner or something. And it was at the time when England really didn't know where their back row was going. And they were certainly scratching around badly for open sides. It was tough because, Rob Shaw was not really an open side. I mean, Chris himself pretty much admitted that he wasn't really an open side. But there weren't, but Tom Wood wasn't a genuine open side either. And those were the two contenders. And England was scratching around for a natural seven. And Richard said, have you seen anything of Sam Underhill? I mean, the only time I'd heard the word Underhill was in The Hobbit. I didn't know who he was talking about. He said, keep your eye open for him. And I instantly thought, well, this is the next guy. This is the guy they're looking at coming through. This is before we knew about Tom Curry, of course. And Underhill was absolutely terrific. I mean, in the modern seven style, over the ball, absolutely brilliant. What he isn't really is comfortable on the ball as a kneel back, let's say. And he's sure his eggs ain't for Michael Jones. I mean, if you're talking about top end open side flankers, there's Sam Underhill is in the foothills compared to a Michael Jones. But Michael Jones is a once in a generation player. What I respect about Underhill was what I said earlier. I simply didn't see him recovering this level of form after all the injuries and concussion scares and the time spent out of the game. And it's been a remarkable comeback, and it's a massive testament to the bloke's character, because it's a hard old game when things are going well for you.
He's massively proved us wrong. I mean, I think casting my eye back to a year and a half, 2 years ago on this podcast, I think I probably led a movement that was saying his body is just not going to recover and give him the same sort of potential mileage that it has done in the past. And he's proved me wrong and made me look a right fool. So
I mean, look, and he's. I remember doing a column not so long ago for the Rugby Paper saying I would love to see a back row of Cunningham South at 6, Zach Mercer at 8, Ben Earl at 7, because it's still a commonplace that a lot of people think that Ben Earl's a better 7 than he is an 8.
Mm.
I mean, what he actually is, Earl, is he's just a distinctive, sort of one of a kind type of loose forward whose skill set pretty much fits anywhere. But he is a ground covering, genuine loose forward. I want to see Ben Earl from wherever he is in the set piece. I want to see him in the wide open acres, because that's where he causes some real damage. I'm talking in attack here. In defence, you obviously want him tight in, pinching everyone else's ball, which he's very good at. But as a long range supporting sort of loose forward of the Michael Jones style, he's the nearest thing we have.
Yeah.
He may not be quite as good as Michael, but let's see.
He was at 12 for the last 15, 20 minutes on Saturday.
We didn't. Yeah, but he's quick enough. He is quick enough, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Well, we said I wanted Sam Simmonds given a run at 12 this time a couple of years ago when we were picking our Rugby World Cup 2023 15s, probably a year and a half out. So not that I think Ben Earl should ever be in England 12, but giving us a 6-2 split with essentially 9 forwards on the pitch and still 7 backs it broadens your options, doesn't it?
Well, would it be too mischievous for me to suggest that Ben Earl is the fastest England inside centre for the last 20 years?
Yeah, and probably the least injury prone as well.
Well, quite possibly. I mean, if the game's all about pace, in fact, there may have been a bigger Manu Tuilagi fan if they just swapped positions.
Put Manu at 8. I tell you what, that would have been good to see.
Well, they did it with Bastero.
Yeah, they did. They did. And
who was even slower than Manu?
I know, but
takes some believing. I mean, Frankie Bastero ran backwards. I mean, he didn't go backwards, but there was a famous saying at Bristol Rugby Club once. They had a prop called Justin Ring, and Bob Dwyer, when he was coaching Bristol back in the early parts of the professional era, said of Justin Ring, he said he's so slow he decelerates from a standing start, which was quite damning when you think about it. It was a wicked one-liner, and there are a fair few England inside centres who fall into that category as far as I'm concerned. Ben Earl isn't one of them.
I was about to say, you saying Ben Earl is the fastest 12 isn't actually going to offend anybody because he's that quick. But I think what you then said after that will now offend select few people, so I should have stopped you at source.
I'm not here not to be offensive.
No,
There's a double negative for you.
I think we've all established that by this
Yeah,
point.
that's good. Good news.
Shaun is inbound. I don't know how long, but I want to mention the red coloured elephant in the room. That's Charlie Ewels, who now I think has a record that no one will ever break. That in 9 minutes of international rugby, spanning across 2 years or 2 and a bit years, he's been red carded twice, which is impressive. This one was even worse than the Ireland one, I would say.
Very good, was it? I don't know what guys are thinking. I mean, we had this discussion about the Abana red card in the Premiership final,
Yeah,
and lots of people. I mean, there are loads. There aren't many excuses to make for the Ewells tackle. There was a bit of a trend not so long ago where people were going for the opposing scrum half's standing leg when he was box kicking, which wasn't nice in itself. But this is worse somehow. I mean, Leach was in a very, very vulnerable position there, and we're down to motives. And I don't want to believe that he's targeted Leach in any injurious sense. But who knows what people's motives are? I don't have the faintest idea. Who knows what Abano's motives were? He might have been thinking, "Here comes our number 8. I'm going to knock his block off." If that's a motivation, and before the lawyers get in touch, I don't believe it was. But you can't tell what people are thinking, and sometimes they're just not thinking at all. And Ewells, it's not dirty, but he doesn't have that reputation. He doesn't have. He's not like some throwback to the 70s or the 80s when there were all sorts of evil gits running around in second rows. He doesn't have that reputation at all, partly because of the modern game doesn't really throw up that kind of character. And secondly, I just don't believe it of him. But, it was a pretty dumb tackle and an unpleasant tackle, really.
was. Do you think we'll see him in an England setup at all again?
That really depends on where Borthwick has him in the England second row pecking order when everyone is fit and available. I don't think Steve would react. Insofar as I know Steve, he's not the kind of guy to make those to pass really severe judgments on people for things that still happen in dynamic sort of split seconds of a game. But I don't think Ewells is close to a starting place in an England side. Anyway, not all things being equal. Anyway, but he's a very effective player, and he probably doesn't deserve the record and reputation he now has. In fact, I'm sure he doesn't really deserve it. But hey, if you don't want to get sent off, don't make dumb tackles like that, or clear outs rather.
No, it is unfortunate. I mean, he's the first England player to ever get red carded twice in tests, which I know you say he doesn't have a reputation or didn't. I think, unfortunately, that might stick.
Yeah, well, it probably will. Mike Burton was, I think, the first in 1975.
Oh, was he?
In England, Australia. And Mike should have been sent off more than once and wasn't for England. So there we go.
Sorry, I think you meant first red carder, and that's probably stuck as well. Morning, Shaunagh.
Morning, Ollie. Morning, Chris.
Hiya, how are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you. Are you living that relaxed life right now?
Not quite, not yet. I've still got loads going on. Just as because I've been on holiday for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm catching up for that, and then I'm hoping in August. I've currently got nothing booked in.
Okay, nice.
I wonder how long it'll stay like that for.
Where were you on holiday?
Egypt for 2 weeks.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it was nice. It's too hot for me though. It's 40 degrees on some days.
Yeah. My brother went.
So, which bit of Egypt hot in summer didn't you recognise in advance?
I actually did no research on temperature because I'm an idiot. And normally I can only go away in June. So I just went away in June because of rugby season. I didn't consider the fact I could go away anytime now, and that's part of the luxury of retirement.
Did you do the whole pyramids thing?
No, we didn't. It was supposed to be like more like 50 in Cairo. So we avoided it.
Oh, well, good
But I have to
forward
go back.
planning.
Yeah, exactly. More planning just
Yeah.
shining through.
You didn't avoid Egypt, but you did enough research to avoid Cairo,
Yeah, but only
which
once
is
we
an
got there.
interesting approach to holiday planning. I think it's
Yeah. But only once we got there, there was no planning involved because it's only when we got there someone said, "Oh, we went to Hurghada," and my knee melted when it touched the ground. I thought, "Oh, that sounds a bit warm."
Oh God, who were you out there with?
Just me and my husband.
Okay. Oh, very nice.
Yeah. It was our first actual holiday. Like we've been away in different countries because we got married in St. Lucia. That's where he's from. So we've been abroad lots, but for different work or to see family, etc. But it was
Yeah.
our first just straight holiday.
Oliver sometimes conducts this podcast from the Caribbean.
See.
Take you long, did it?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it's good. Most of us are chucking muesli down our throats. The ungodly hour he chooses to start these things, while he's on his 19th rum punch.
Oh,
this is
nice.
why I spout so much shit on this podcast. So there's my excuse. Shaunagh, I'm going to throw you straight in the deep end, actually. Do you mind if we start with your quick fire question section?
Yep.
Is that okay? It's just, given that you've just retired, so it's just some stuff about your career, you as a person. Obviously, there's so much to the rugby player, but so much beyond it as well. So let's use that to sort of delve in a little bit, and then we'll go a little bit deeper after that.
I like that sentence.
Thank you.
To the rugby vet, also so much beyond it. Wow. We might have
Poetic.
to Ollie.
Yeah,
Very,
that
very, very poetic.
it's because I
Yeah.
haven't had any rum punches. Nickname.
BTSB, which stands for Big Time Shaunagh Brown. Not self-appointed nickname, I must
That's
add.
so good. Who came up with that?
It was a mixture of Georgia Gray, Holly Myers. I think Davinia Catlin might have had something to do with it, but basically the other girls, of course, on the team.
BTSB. That's so good. Best rugby memory.
Winning the Premiership, well, Premier 15s 2021 and getting player of the match.
Nice. Most embarrassing rugby memory.
I can actually think of one. Okay, I'll go playing in France against France and letting the only try in. Basically, France got a try because of entirely because of my defensive error, and I just watched them walk it in because I wasn't playing my role as guard very well.
When was that?
That was that's got to be probably 21 actually that year.
No, fine. Same year.
Yeah, it's certainly a COVID year.
Oh, so there was no crowd to see it then.
No, oh, maybe not. I can't remember actually. But the fact that we obviously it happened in the moment, I saw that, and the amount of times that clip got replayed because
Yeah.
of because it's pretty much their only try that they scored. It was played again and again and again, like in meetings, and then it came up in my individual development plan, and then it's in another meeting, and then it came up like the next year, this is how we're not going to defend against France. I was like, come on, get over it, all right? It's my fault. It's fine. Move on.
Pre-game tune.
I like a bit of Burner Boy, and I'm gonna go last last.
Nice. Nice. Post-game meal. Chewy's clue.
Post-game meal.
Whatever happened to Led Zeppelin?
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe they're still playing guitars and stuff. I don't. I
Most of
don't.
them are dead.
Oh, are they dead? Oh, there you
No,
go.
well, no, only one of them. But it was just my way of saying I don't know what you're talking about because I'm too old.
Ollie
Chewy,
does. That's right. We
I'll
can
do
pay
it.
it for you.
Chewy, spell burner boy.
But Burner Boy.
Yeah.
Um, um, well, I'm assuming. Well, Burner. Well, it's just a trick question, isn't it? Burner boy Bouy because he has his own yacht because he's so famous.
Good.
Next.
Incorrect.
On both
Post-game meal.
both sides of the name.
Yeah, but both parts wrong.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a relief.
Post-game meal.
It's got to be a Chinese, and I can tell you my order if you want to, but it's always a Chinese.
Do you get smoked shredded chicken?
No, there's not enough meat in it. It's just like crispy shredded beef. There's not really
Yeah.
any beef in it. It's just all batter.
So what do you get?
Okay, so I get hot and sour soup, crispy seaweed, followed by a duck in plum sauce and a chicken chop suey with egg fried rice, a large egg fried rice, and of course.
And for mains?
Mm. I don't finish it all, I must admit. I do have some left over for breakfast the next morning, which is obviously the best kind of post-game nutrition you can get.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, it's good. It's good front row. It's nice to see that front rows don't really change. It's,
Never.
I went to a rugby writers' dinner where I was sat on the table with my old friend Gareth Chilcott. Made the mistake of going over to talk to Gregor Townsend. I'm going to drop some names here. And when I got back, he'd eaten my dinner as well as his own.
Or, to be fair, that's normally the best thing. If somebody doesn't turn up next to you and you're at a dinner, I will eat both dinners. But you just popping away and coming back, that's a bit unfair. That's rough.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have done that.
Yeah.
Or I would have hidden it and blamed somebody else.
It didn't take me long. I can't have been away long because Gregor Townsend didn't know who I was.
Salads don't win scrums, do they? Best player you've played against?
I'm going to say Alex Matthews.
Nice. Well, then, best player you've played with? Also,
Well, I could say that, but I was just going to drop some more of my really good rugby playing friends in, and I'm going to say Beckett because we was Team SB together, our initials. And I had a great time playing with her at Quins. It was like, yeah, it was a great year at Quins.
Was her nickname BTSB as well?
No, she was just part of Team SB because we've also got Sarah Bonner in the crew.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Favorite player right now?
Sadia Kabeya. She's my little superhero. And seeing her come up through the ranks and seeing her keep growing and growing and improving. Yeah, Sadia Kabeya.
She actually brought you into this podcast I don't know if you remember it, back in New Zealand. I think maybe you were roomies. I'm not 100% sure, but it was just, yeah. I don't know if you remember, that was us. I don't know if you remember
it. Just pop my head in to say hello.
Yeah, exactly. Favorite stadium?
I feel obliged to say Twickenham, what of it being National Stadium and all. But I'm going to say Exeter Chiefs Stadium because of the home, which I don't often get space. It's women's played for England games, but the home changing room.
Okay.
So much space. And then even the seats, the sub seats, they're like car seats. And I'm pretty sure they're heated as well, if I remember rightly.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Nice. Rugby idol.
I didn't have one because I didn't grow up playing rugby.
Yeah,
And
cool.
even as an adult, I just wanted to be the best version of me. So never
have any
never.
idol at all? Even if
I
it was...
just used to look up to my mum, really.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I didn't really have one when I was growing up. I just wanted to go out and play on my bike, go out and play on the adventure playground. And my mum let me do all of that. So she was my idol. Get out and play. All right, fine. See you in 5 hours.
Favorite gym exercise?
Power clean.
Okay, nice. Occupation if rugby didn't exist. I mean, you got several of these anyway.
Well, I was gonna say I've got a few certified ones.
Yeah.
My favorite, I'd probably say commercial diver of that I've done and would go back to because it's so varied and just trying to explain to people what you do as a commercial diver is quite fun, especially when you go in the water and you can't see the hand in front of your face and you've got to try and do a job.
We'll go over your CV in a second because for people that don't know it puts the rest of us to shame, even Chris Hewett. Occupation, no, sorry, superstition.
That's a low bar.
A very low bar.
You're okay. You can get over that without breaking stride. You'll be fine.
Superstitions.
Actively avoid them.
Good.
Because what if you can't do something one day or something happens out of your control? And because so much of rugby is out of my individual control, whether it be team, location, whether I actively stay away from any superstitions.
We had a very different attitude to your captain, Sarah Hunter, or former captain, Sarah Hunter.
Did you get the sandwiches?
Yeah, the peanut, I think,
butter.
sandwiches.
Yeah.
And her mum she forgot it, and her mum had to bring it to the stadium like an hour before kickoff or something like that.
Imagine the trauma with that.
Yeah. For both her and her mum.
Yeah, not for me.
No, good decision. Rugby law you would change.
Maul. I would outlaw the maul.
Wow.
And I know as a forward, it's probably not the best thing to say, but I just think it's such a waste of time and energy. Like a successful maul will go 5 meters. Like that's like yes, success, obviously because you score. But you might as well just give it to an individual, and an individual, you can choose me if you like. I'd get the ball 5 meters if you want me to get the ball 5 meters, and then there's like 15 other people who are available to do other things.
Yeah.
I'd outlaw them all. And they hurt so much. You put your head in so many places, your feet get stamped on, you get pinched, you get lifted up. No good.
You're starting to sound like a scrum half, not a front rower.
Well, I don't know if you've seen me in a mall, Ollie. I try and avoid them. I just sort of hang out at the back, like, I've got the edge. I've got the
And
edge, trying to not
yeah.
put my head in. And then a back like comes out, goes past me to hit. I think, oh, I probably should have hit that myself. But I've still got the edge.
Best thing about working in rugby.
The variety of people, of minds, of different types of people we need, and the different body shapes, the different heights and sizes and mindsets. And yeah, it's just the variety of people, everyone's backgrounds. I love it.
Amazing. And speaking of variety, I'll go straight into your CV, and I'm definitely going to forget stuff, so I apologize. But working backwards, rugby player, hammer thrower for Team GB at the Commonwealth Games. You competed in discus, shot put, boxing, strong woman.
Yeah.
Then employment wise, I suppose that
Well, you missed one sport, but to be fair, it's not that much advertised. Is Highland
Relay
Games.
eventing.
No, no. Highland Games.
Highland Game. I don't actually know what that is.
Oh, it's just it was in Scotland for a start. Not always in the Highlands, but it's in Scotland. And it's just a whole manner of different ways of throwing things is the best way to describe it.
I'd imagine strong. Well, I mean, hammer and discus and shot put translate quite well, but strong women too, because they have keg tosses and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. My favorite thing about Highland Games is the caber toss because it's so difficult and you can't. Well, I couldn't practice because I didn't have a caber in England, so you can only practice on the day. But it was so hard.
That's basically throwing a tree, isn't it?
I'd go telegraph pole
Okay.
because it is normally telegraph poles. They don't just cut them down, but the old ones they sort of just plane them in a way where you can get your hand underneath it. But it's essentially a telegraph pole, yeah.
Wow. God. I mean, I would imagine the retirement age for a Highland game is slightly later on than rugby retirement age.
So I have been sent through a fixtures list of Highland games for this summer. So Rob's going to do some in August. That free August I talked about.
Yeah. It's no longer free. And then professionally, just very quick. So commercial diver, you mentioned, gas engineer, firefighter.
Commercial diver, gas engineer, firefighter.
What
Yeah, I mean, if you want lifeguard when I was 18, you can have that.
Okay.
But
Well, actually, if you were being paid as a lifeguard, that basically fits in nicely with commercial diver, doesn't it?
not really, because lifeguard, you're just sort of watching people swim.
Yeah.
I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I went in the water.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's just like a normal swimming pool where people can swim. And even with the swimming lessons, they've got someone in there with them, their instructor.
So it wasn't open water lifeguarding. You went on one of
Oh,
those
not proper lifeguarding, no.
things on a beach.
No, like actual lifeguarding. No.
Yeah.
Sitting in a very hot indoor pool and
Oh,
generally
right.
chatting to the other lifeguard and not paying attention whatsoever, actually.
Chewy, out of all the ridiculously cool things I just listed, I cannot believe you've shown most interest in lifeguarding.
I didn't say it was the most interesting. It was an attempt
You
at a
asked the most
joke.
question.
It was an attempt at a joke because I just imagined she could combine commercial diving with lifeguarding so that when someone drowns properly, you can go and fish them out.
I suppose so. But I think
I
I
mean,
want to
it's
ask
just the way my mind was working. Call me slightly dark, but
Yeah.
it was hey, look, it was jokes are never as good when you have to tell them for the 48th time. So let's move on.
I've tried much more than 48, mate.
Well, that's true. Yeah, yeah. One of my
Sure.
jokes worked, but I can't remember what year that was.
Shaunagh, at this stage, with obviously retired rugby player now, but what do you identify most with? Is it rugby? But there are obviously so many layers to who you are and what you do or have done.
Yeah, I'm going down the path of making up my own job title now, and I think I quite like change maker.
Okay.
Not
That's
entirely sure what that means yet, but yeah, I don't like you say because firefighter I actually find that quite boring in all honesty. Because didn't really do a lot and you drank a lot of tea, and the stereotypes are completely true.
In
Um, Commercial
terms
diving,
of male dominance in.
oh, 100%. I think where I was, it was 95% male and
Wow.
96% white as well. So I was a very small, as a mixed race female, there's not many of me in my area, and probably not many in the country. London will be a lot more mixed, but then that's just because of who lives in London. But yeah, and the age thing as well. So I was the youngest by quite some way, but because my area hadn't recruited in 10 years, so everyone was sort of 40 plus, well, like mid 40 plus. There might have been like one late 30s, but yeah, so that was it was tough in terms of identity and belonging. And I was just like, and it was great because it was just like chatting to my, I don't know, my uncles all the time. But you know what I mean? Sometimes you want to chat to your cousins and not your uncles.
Do you think then, just to sort of create a segue from it, obviously working as a firefighter, like you say, 95% male dominant, and the stats when you got into rugby were obviously not quite that bad, but obviously a traditionally male dominant industry. Do you think that helped with you taking the leap that maybe as a woman of color in a sport dominated by, well, not woman of color, well, it helped you take that leap?
Yeah, I think it did. And I say prepare me, rugby was first because rugby was 2017, fire service
Yeah.
was 2019. But it helped in that you kind of get through trauma together. And obviously, they're two very different types of trauma, but that whole team setting as well, because I'd come from being an individual athlete, i.e., like I say, a hammer thrower, a disc thrower, a shot putter. All I had to do was worry about myself for years and years and years. It was just about me and what I needed and what made me good and what I had to stay away from, or I knew what I could do best for me to perform. But actually, you come into a team environment, it's not just about you. And even if I'm good, if you go on the fire service, you needed three other people who were good as well. You go to your rugby team, you need, well, loads of people, loads more than 14, because you've got your bench and obviously the people you train against. But it's like, it's no good worrying about, well, at least I've had a good 8 hours sleep. At least I've had my three good meals yesterday. I've carved up, etc., etc. If 14 other mates on the pitch at the time haven't done that, then you're not going to be able to perform as an individual. So yeah, there was certainly parallels, and even how we talk and communicate to each other, because rugby is obviously awful how we talk to each other, and I do love it. It's so savage. And similarly in the fire service, sometimes, like you say, you go through a real life trauma, but you're there for each other, and regardless of age, of gender, of sexuality, when it's just you four in that situation, like that's what matters, and you getting each other through it, no matter what. And even if it's like someone you don't particularly get on with on another day, actually you've seen something horrific on your last shift, and only you four have seen it. So that creates a whole different bond, and how you talk to each other and getting to know each other. And that was actually the bit I really liked, is about realizing how many different types of people you can get on with in different types of situations. So like day to day, I'm like, he's not a bit of me, but actually we've gone through this together and that's bonded us further. And actually, still day to day, probably not a bit of me, but I know there's a part inside of you that is, and that's what brought us together.
If you were starting your sporting career over again and just operating off a blank slate, but you were armed with the knowledge
Mhm.
that you have now, would you tend towards team sport or individual sport? Because you've had tangible achievement in both. Where would your instincts lie, do you think?
I would still go individual sport. To try and avoid your question, I'd do both. But if you made me choose, I would say individual sport
Okay.
first, and then team, because I feel like there's so much more accountability in an individual sport. And if I don't do something right, and then it's a straight reflection on the competition that weekend, you haven't prepared yourself well, Shaunagh. You haven't done your analysis, you haven't done your nutrition right. So then on Saturday, you're directly affected. Whereas in a team sport, you can hide.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes you do need the support of your team, and actually you do need to hide because you've had a rubbish week, because you've had a hard time at work, at home, and you've still got to perform on Saturday, and actually your teammates can almost cover that up for you, which is a plus in some situations. But having both and having the individual side first makes you realize you are important in that role, because when it's just you, it's just you. and rugby can help bring the side of you out, but like, oh, it's nice to have people around is the big thing that I enjoyed about rugby, and through the wins and through actually the big thing was through the wins. So I'd have do some great throws, make some PBs. I remember making my Commonwealth standard. I was out in Sweden, throwing the hammer, and I was like, I don't even think I won a competition, but I'd thrown a Commonwealth standard. It meant I was going to the Commonwealth Games. But because there's so much else going on, there's so many other people got their own things, their own events, their own distances they're trying to achieve it. It's kind of just me going, yay, like yay me. But if I was in a team, like we'd all be buzzing together. And so yeah, that was a big difference. But I'd still rather do individual first and then team.
You
And if
you
I
you 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 seem to be quite big from on the basis of that answer. You seem to be quite big on personal accountability and pretty merciless when it comes to questioning yourself and
yeah,
and,
yeah.
and measuring where your standards are. Would that be a fair reflection of what you are?
Yeah, for sure. When I'm watching back a game and something's gone wrong or is going wrong, I'll always look to blame myself, but not in a way it's like poor me. I'll always think like, what could I have done better in that situation? So I make a pass and someone drops the ball. The first thing I think is, was that my pass? I'm not gonna think, oh, that person, she should have caught it. Actually, I'm looking at what I could have done better, and it might be a collapsed maul or a collapsed scrum. Like it's the first thing I think of is what was my role in that situation? What could I have done better? And then we look to other people, and yeah, that's a like even just tiny things in and around the environment. One of my pet hates is like we're having a meeting and everyone goes down to training and someone's left their cups on the table, someone's left their things out. And I'm like, what, like, why would you know you took your cup to the table? Why would you not put it in a dishwasher or wash it back up? Those little things. And I do think, how do you live life at home? Is it because there's so many people now who have other things done for them? Or is it just because you simply forgot? Like those little bits really annoy me. And I think, what in the world? Like, why have you done that? Why did you not label your own kit? And then when you lose it, you moan. Like, it's
Is it
little.
too late for you to run for Prime Minister?
Do you know what? I'd love to. I'm strongly considering getting into politics. And some of the things that are said at the moment, and I know do listen to a lot of books about politics, how to get into it, the type of people to get into it. And I think they haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue about their subject. One of the book I'm listening to at the moment, I think the stat was there has been 5 housing ministers in 4 years because nobody really knows what's going on. They just put in a role and told you're in charge of it, but actually the civil servants do the role. But anyway, that's probably a podcast for another day. But no, I'd quite like to get into politics at some point.
We do occasionally get onto politics on this podcast, but
Chewy, no, you occasionally.
Oliver deflects and diverts because he knows that his lot are about to get their backsides kicked.
Oh, you one of them, Oliver? Oh
and
no!
The amount of stick he's going to get after July the 4th is unbelievable.
It's going to be the worst defeat in history.
None of what you've just said is true, Chewy. So you'd make a great politician, by the way.
Yeah,
You're just lying. Just making think. Oh, it's not lying.
One word.
With the truth.
Oliver, you live in Surrey. What else am I likely to think?
Oh yeah. We make stereotypes, but that doesn't mean it's not false.
None of that will make the cut, Shaunagh.
No, I promise you it will. I leave in. I've decided painting myself as a scapegoat is a good way to go forward on this podcast. Get a bit of sympathy. You repeatedly reminding my one holiday sipping rum punches doesn't help with that cause, though.
No. Well, I mean, you can't be a socialist if you don't run a podcast from the Caribbean.
Champagne socialist, I believe
they're called. I'm just saying.
I promise all of this will make the cut. Shaunagh, obviously, it seems like your horizons are very broad, options firmly on the table. I read in one of your columns that you did apply to Gladiators a year and a bit ago.
Yeah.
Presuming, having not seen you on Gladiators, that wasn't successful.
Failure is what we call it in the real world. Yeah.
What happened? Did they get back to you? Anything
Nothing.
like that?
Not even a reply email.
Oh.
So, but what I'm telling myself is that you fill out the form, you do a video, etc., etc., and at the end it says filming will take place of May and June. What was it? 23. Will you be available for those months? And I was in the Cayman Islands then, and I came back on the 1st of June. So I said no to May, but available for
Oh,
June.
fine,
So
okay.
what I've told myself is that, well, I put myself out of the race before they've even considered me. And
Fine.
that must be the only reason why they
Only
haven't put me on.
for
Am I
sure.
the only person in the history of this podcast never to have spent any time at all in the Caribbean?
Yeah. I was out there for 4 months, actually. It was lovely.
Oh, rub it in.
Coaching. But I did then apply again this year as contender, and someone did get back to me, but I was on holiday, and I've not heard from him since. So
Oh
who knows?
no. Okay. Yeah. A friend of mine's just because the video you have to film some sort of like athletic ability video, don't you?
Well, I think mine is not athletic ability at all. It was more
Yeah.
my personality.
Yeah. Fine.
But you do have to talk about your athletic ability and your what do you think about competitiveness and stuff? So it's like quite cringe things. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, winning's everything. I'll do anything. I'll win. Brr.
Well, hopefully the showmakers are watching this right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So I mean, Gladiators is one option. I want to talk about strong woman a little bit because I
Yeah.
think the average age of a strong woman is 36, 37.
Yeah, it sounds about right. You just get strong. If you lift, you just get stronger and stronger as you get older.
Well, exactly. So surely that could be on the table. I mean, I don't know you
Yeah.
haven't lost much strength.
So it could be, but that involves a lot of work, like a lot of physical work. And I don't mind work and grafting, but I've done the whole elite athlete thing. I'm kind of over it. Because even Benji, so my husband, he keeps saying, so we're going to get into CrossFit? And I just go, no. And he keeps literally yesterday, he must have asked me 5 times, but it's sort of a couple of times a week, he'll say, so we get into CrossFit? I was just going, no. I've been there, I've done it. I've got nothing to achieve because I know once I'm in it, like I want to be the best. So I just avoid it completely because it will not necessarily take over my life, but it'll be a huge part. And that's the whole thing that I've wanted to sort of tap out of. And I do struggle to just participate and just have fun. I've learned that about myself. I can't just pop into something, and especially can't just pop in and then lose. And then
You've
like,
got an addictive personality in that sense.
well, I just don't like losing, in all honesty. And especially when I can see we could be better. I'm like, why did you drop the ball? Why like and you don't look bothered that we've lost. And you just say, oh, it's okay, we'll just have beers in the clubhouse afterwards. I'm like, no, but we've lost. That's not okay.
Completely
Um,
agree.
so that's quite community sport. And I'm not good in that space. So best that I just avoid it.
I'm not insisting that you go into something ridiculously cool, just like everything else you've ever done. But the only reason I ask is because obviously, well, from the outside in, you gave up hammer or retired from hammer throw. 2 weeks later, took up rugby. I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You retired from rugby and you turned on that decision. So I just wonder whether,
Yeah, there's a pattern here, isn't there?
well, yeah, just a little thrill-seeking, adrenaline junkie. I'm exactly the same, that sort of type of personality. So I'm just wondering if there is literally anything in the pipeline to sort of fulfill those needs that you do seem to have.
Our answer at the moment, not yet. But
Okay.
and if anything, it would be more of a pastime. Because like I say, I want to stay away from the physical elite side. But I have been partial to a bit of cricket recently.
Nice.
But not necessarily playing because I've never played in my life. I've hit a few balls. A few weeks ago, I hit a few balls. That was fun.
A long way, probably.
Eh?
A long way, probably.
Well, we was doing the indoor nets. It was actually, I say a few weeks ago, it was back in March because I was at the Oval for an event, and as part of the afternoon, it was go down and do practical. So in the morning it was panel session, which is all good fun. But then the best bit is we actually got to hit some balls. But of course, I was the first one down there practicing and the last one to leave. There's literally like, Shaunagh, are you gonna go? Because like we're kind of closing up. Like everyone's long gone. I'm like, but I've not hit the ball good enough. This is not so I just quite like the idea of watching for now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been quite involved in cricket. I've got a few hundred dates lined up as well. I was
Nice.
it was England, New Zealand women in July, but I'm away, which I'm a bit sad about. But yeah, have been getting involved in cricket somehow. I'm not really sure how it's happened, but I might start playing.
Are you watching the Men's World Cup at all?
No,
No? Okay. Well, there's a Men's World
not
Cup.
at all.
England are in the semi-finals now.
That's cool.
Yeah, so
Sounds good.
tune into that. Just
But is
to
that the 5 day stuff? Because
no,
I've
no,
not
no,
got
no, no,
paid
no, no. 2 hours.
T20.
2 hours, T20.
Oh, yeah, I can entertain that.
Get involved with that.
But I
There's
do
an
quite like
idea.
the bright colours of the 100.
You what?
The bright colours of the 100 kits.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah, yeah.
favorite bit is the colors of the kit and the light up stumps. I really enjoy that.
Does the idea of a 5-day test match not appeal to you, Sean?
Ever so slightly, no.
I may
But
play the age card in a minute.
the thought of it, though, I like the thought of playing. Is that do you play cricket? Yeah, you play cricket. So your team's playing, and you could be chilling,
Yeah,
eating,
yeah, yeah.
and I like that. And I'd be quite low down on the batting list. So I probably would never bat. That would be quite enjoyable. And then the catching, I'm quite good at catching, so I'd be out catching. But how often does a catch come to you? So I do quite like the idea. It's just
Yes,
quite.
if you're not going to bat at all, he might expect you to bowl.
Oh. Okay, I probably have to work on my batting then because my bowling would be awful.
There's nothing better on a day of cricket than if you're a lower order batter who comes in at 8, 9, 10, 11. Captain,
That exactly.
captain wins the toss and decides to bat first. You're like, I'm putting my feet up for the next 4 hours, break open the sandwiches.
Yeah.
Yes, until
And
until you're 47 for 6.
That's true. That is true. And then,
Indeed.
yeah.
We've all
And
been
if it
there.
rains, my favorite bit, if it rains, stop play. It's only in the summer, so if it's too cold. And then even in the winter when you do practice, you're in the indoor nets. I just feel like it's a bit of me.
So your passion for cricket is basically the less I have to do it, the better game it is.
Yeah, but you get a good day out, and I am all for a good day out. Because you're still with the team, right? And you're still hanging out, making friends in the sun, having something to eat, something to drink.
Where's
I,
Jeff Boycott when you need him?
I have to say the cricket, I don't think Shaunagh will know who that is, to be honest, Chewy.
Possibly not.
Not Scooby.
Yeah.
Possibly not. I spend most of my time on this podcast in a sort of cross-generational confusion.
Vortex.
Well, indeed. I'm down near the Earth's core now.
Does it make you feel older or younger, Chewy?
Sorry?
Does it, does it make you feel older or younger, this
It
podcast?
just makes me. It just makes me feel as though I'm, around. I'm waiting for the dinosaurs to turn up. I'm expecting a pterodactyl to fly through the window. I feel so old.
Well,
It's extraordinary. I watched the Sevens yesterday. I watched a little bit of the Sevens, and it's just I don't know. It just made me feel 120.
Because they just run around the whole time.
I
They just keep
mean,
running.
at the standard I played, which was not at an elite level, but Sevens is the most knackering game on earth. I mean, it's a really tiring,
Yeah.
incredibly tiring game.
Yeah.
And if you have a minimum of skills as well, which I did, you're doubly exposed.
Can't pass. Oh, that shows in sevens. Can't tackle. Oh, that shows in sevens.
Chewy's biggest issue is can't run, which definitely shows in seven.
Oh no, I have pace to burn.
You are faster than
anyway,
every
moving as
single
well. It's a big blow for GB not to make the Olympics. Seriously, for the Great Britain men's team not to get it. That's a big blow.
But it's a weird format. This is I don't know if you saw Shaunagh. GB men failed to qualify for the Olympics at the weekend.
Yeah, but the women did.
The women did, and the women are stronger than the men's side anyway.
For sure,
are in the series, and obviously Ellie's going, Meg's going as well, so they've got a little bit of extra firepower, which is nice. But it's a weird format because you've got the likes of, South Africa nearly didn't qualify. South African men, that is. GB didn't qualify, and then I think you got some fairly smaller nations included as well. I can't remember who now off the top of my head, but it is a bit of a strange one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no GB. Did you ever dabble in seven, Shaunagh?
Only like in the summer for something to do, but not seriously. Because again, running is not my forte, but I can hand someone off.
Yeah.
And so I used to sort of try and run a bit. Someone would catch me, I'd slow down, hand them off, and then take off again. And if you do that enough times, people just don't want to chase you just because they don't want to get handed off.
Yeah.
That was my.
As you've spent your recent times avoiding the heat in Egypt, did you see any of the women's Premiership final?
No, I was in Margate having a great day. I've watched highlights of it, but no, I said to Ollie earlier, when I'm not rugby, I am anti-rugby.
Oh, okay.
I like to stay away from it.
Yeah.
But no, I've seen a few highlights, and the score at halftime compared to the score at full time.
It was a really good game, actually. Terrific. Yeah. Contrasting styles. Bristol in a sense had a lot of the sort of box office eye-catching talents,
Yeah.
But once the Gloucester Hartpury teams just upped the intensity after half time, they were more disciplined, more aggressive. They played really well. It was a fascinating final. In fact, it was a game of the weekend. I say that because I didn't see the URC final, which is obviously a heck of a game. But that was the game of the weekend. I really enjoyed it. The women's final, brilliant.
Yeah, it's nice to see it everywhere as well, and it's not just sort of one-off posts. I look on my feed, it's everywhere, and the highlights are everywhere. And like
Yeah,
Cleco George's boot, I mean, she's been saving them all season, but seeing how much she did this weekend, and like you say, just knowing Bristol's style of play and the bravery behind it, which obviously so often works, and just playing out of the 22 and almost just kicking and not hoping, but as in there's stuff behind it, but it's that the offloading game and how yeah just brave with it, and that's like you say the entertaining side of rugby, which I love
yeah.
to see. And even if it's against us and they're smashing us, it's still like fair play on you, because this is the fifth time in a row you've played out of your 22 and we've still not clocked on to that you're going to play. So well done.
Do you think the women's game is still on the upward curve? It's sort of after that World Cup win in Paris, the graph went upwards quite quickly, and there's a hell of a lot of interest. You can see it from the Euros in women's football as well. How much a bit of success really kickstarts the public consciousness and generates a whole new audience. Do you think the women's rugby is still on that upward curve, or is it bottomed out a little bit? Where
No,
where,
it's,
where, where
it's
do you see the game at the moment?
because like I always say, the bar was so low in the first place, it's not hard to be on an upward curve, but at least we are on an upward curve, and it's still nowhere near football at all whatsoever. Like it's
No.
still in a whole different universe for to women's football, but it is on the way up. It's what is frustrating is like things seem to be going well, and like say interest is up, and there's media around it, and then you find out something like the England games are not being shown on free to air TV, or like they're behind the paywall. But then understanding the bit behind it, and it's just like, do you want money now from a broadcasting company, or do you want the exposure to maybe get money later? And those, it's interesting to be part of those conversations, and things that seem like that's a bit backwards on the surface, actually when you ask the questions and find out why it's done, it's just like, well, that's kind of the only choice we have at the moment, because we're not in a place where we can make the decisions as women's rugby. Like we can't dictate to a TNT Sports when we want to play, so you will have to play a lot of your games on a Sunday or a Friday night, as it was this year. So yeah, it's not in the like the same stratosphere as women's football yet, but it is on the way up, and interest is growing, and the numbers of people watching, and especially for us at Quins, like we would easily every week get sort of 1,000 people watching, and just for a standard game, one that's not been put any sort of extra marketing into it. But then sadly, some clubs are not as active with their fan base, and I say that I don't know for sure, but what I do see is the numbers of people watching when we're playing against them at away games. But there's still so much growth, and for me, that's the exciting thing. Like I said, the bar was so low in the first place. It's not hard to kind of get where well, it is.
The game just has to move where the exposure is at its level of development at the moment. I mean, you can see it in French rugby, in men's French rugby, club rugby, which is wildly successful.
Yeah.
They've just signed a massive new television contract extension with Canal Plus and what have you. They got, by rugby standards, money coming out of their ears. They've got promotion and relegation all the way down through the leagues. All those things are in place.
Yeah.
But Pro D2 play again. There's one game on a Thursday night, and the rest of them play on a Friday. They never play on a Saturday. They never play on a Sunday. The second division, if they want the TV exposure, they just have to suck it up really and say we're going to play evening rugby Thursday, Friday. That's our window. We make the best of it, but it gives them huge exposure.
Yeah, but and then so the big difference there would be that, just making up a number, say 80% of the women's prem are still full-time workers or
Yep.
students. And so the evening options are not really an option, a viable option or a sustainable one, because we only had one Friday game this year, but that was like mayhem and chaos. For like, there was people at work on the Friday, and like leaving work Friday afternoon to get to the game Friday evening. Like you can't sustain that as an elite athlete.
No.
So yeah, we're just not in that place, and I don't believe we'll be there anytime soon.
So then you're just talking about outside of prime time, Saturday and Sunday, aren't you?
Yeah,
Those are the slots available practically for
yeah,
people for a game that's still semi-pro,
yeah. And then if
largely
you
semi-pro at
imagine
best.
like if a TV company said, right, 5 o'clock Sunday is what we've got, and we've calculated that'll give you the best exposure as a sport. Like imagine saying to your teams, you're playing at 5 o'clock on a Sunday, like everyone would be furious because so many of the players are still not getting paid to play either. So it's still just a hobby, not just a hobby, but as in you're not being paid and you've got a job to go to Monday morning, by the way. Um, so people just won't play because that's not compatible with my lifestyle. I'm not getting paid to be here. I'll just go back to champ rugby or local rugby where I can just play Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon and enjoy it rather than made to like work in a professional environment whilst not being a professional rugby player. So
I'm
it's
not being paid to be here, but I still turn up.
That's why I
and
feel like
it's
you can
like
talk about
10
whatever you
o'clock
like.
11 o'clock on a Monday, living your best life, not
That's
beating
not
anyone
what
else up. No one's beating you up.
I
No, no, that's as much as can be said for it. No.
verbal jousting. Um, Shaunagh, one other thing, and probably the final thing rugby related I wanted to talk about today was the British and Irish Lions, which obviously we speak about the upward trajectory of women's rugby. That's probably been the biggest example of that to come out of this calendar year. My first question for you is, say when the squad's picked, if they call you up and say, Shaunagh, come out of retirement and play, what are you saying?
I'd say, not this time, but I can come as the best mascot ever.
Mascot.
I could be such a well-being coach. That's what I'd love. Culture coach. That's what I'd do. I'd just go and make everyone happy. That's what I'd love to do because I couldn't think of anything worse than playing international rugby. It's so hard. Like it's so hard. I can't. It's not a thing I can just pop out and do, but I could pop out and be a culture coach and make everyone else shine and everyone else smash it. And then everyone's going, whoa, those Lions were great. Let's see them again in 4 years' time.
I can so see that, to be fair. Although you say you hate losing, so I'm guessing you wouldn't be trying to make, if say you lost a test, trying to make everyone happy straight afterwards, because I'd imagine,
I probably need a few moments to
yeah,
myself.
yeah.
And I'd assess, oh, I didn't make everyone happy enough. It's my fault. It's my fault they lost the game of rugby. She didn't have a smile on her face when she walked out. She was worried about dinner last night because it was awful. Yeah, that would be my fault too.
Well, look, obviously, New Zealand is the destination in 2027.
Yep.
There are a lot of interesting things about it. Obviously, one of the debates was whether you have the Lions tour at the same time as the men's Lions tour, and I know that you were opposed to that. I was too. I think this is absolutely the right decision. The second thing is thinking beyond 2027. Australia obviously have a very strong women's international outfit. South Africa probably wouldn't quite present the opposition that they do in the men's game at the moment. So
Yeah.
where are you foreseeing it going beyond New Zealand?
I would say it could be so the big thing with the Lions and the women's side of it is it can be its own format almost entirely. And there's potential to get a few different countries, a few different teams to a country and play almost a round robin tournament. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same country. Equally, like the women's team could tour other countries and in terms of like jet lag and time differences, etc. But like the women could go elsewhere. And then another idea that was bandied around was potentially touring the UK. So teams came to the UK and we'd have a game in England, a game in Ireland, a game in Scotland, and a game in Wales. Um, and as much as, the history of the Lions is that the Lions tour and go abroad, actually maybe a team or a couple of teams could come to us and continue to help grow our game in our countries, in our home nations. But yeah, the big thing is that it's all for to be decided upon, and it doesn't have to take the same um format as anything to do with the men's really. It'll be what works for the women, what works around the women's time frame, and again acknowledging that a lot of the women are not going to be full-time rugby players who will be Lions. I say a lot. There'll be a few who are not full-time players. And even how long you tour for, it's like, well, this person's got to take 4 weeks of unpaid leave off work. Can we make that even 3.5 just to make that extra difference? And it means a few more pennies in the bank. But yeah, I can see it.
With some imaginative marketing, Sean, and there's no reason why a Lions side shouldn't play a series in France.
Well, yeah, exactly. And again, tour in France, because my favorite rugby was to play in France against France, because because it's all very local township and the town wants it there.
Yeah.
Everyone's so involved, and similar to Exeter, hence why I chose Sandy Park earlier. It's about the local town knowing and understanding what's going on and wanting to be a part of it. So yeah, I think France was in the mix for this time, but for whatever logistical reasons, it wouldn't work. But like the likes of a Canada as well, they have their moments, and maybe you could do like a USA and Canada tour. Maybe you could do a New Zealand and Australia tour. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same country.
So there are obviously one of the other issues that it has raised is out of England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. England, obviously, if you were to pick your Lions squad right now, would probably carry the core of the squad, certainly. I mean, the British Lions took 41 South Africa, the men, this is, back in 2021. If you had to pick 41 names from those four nations in the women's game, I would hazard over half may well be English at the moment. Do you think there should be some sort of nation cap for it so that there's a fairer representation between all four nations?
Short answer, no. Don't think there should be a cap or minimum number. But like the way back to is the men's often have one team dominating. The fact that it could be one of all four and women's is likely to be England, but it happens in the men's game anyway, that one nation dominates. And you don't want to take anything away from England, number one, because England Rugby and the RFU are investing a lot of money in their women. So there's no way we want to say, oh, you need to stop spending so much money on your women because we need to let the other nations catch up. That's absolutely not what we want. Part of it, you hope it encourages the other nations to give them a kick up the bottom a bit and say, like, do more, invest more, be better, and think of the bigger picture. Like, it's not maybe it's not just about giving your players a better salary. Maybe it's about giving them more support and having more staff involved. Maybe it's about making sure you've got a home for like your training grounds. Like, it's more than just paying players a salary. But then the other side of it is it's in 2027 and beyond. So it's the idea of like the likes of a Sarah Bonner or Jade Conkle now, Scottish players going, nah, I'm not going to be good enough in 27. I'm just not going to bother. Like that's not going to happen. The Welsh players, the Irish players, they're going to think like, this is my chance. This is my chance to shine. And by the time we get to 27, like it might be a whole new cohort. And yes, there's a few young English players coming through. Like you don't know who's coming, who's going, who's going to be next. And so I work with Royal London a lot, and a big thing they have is investing in the women's game, and it's like hashtag level the playing field. And there's grants going around at the moment. So their current plan is to give £10,000 to one club per home nation each year until 2027 to help invest in the grassroots game. Because again, a big thing from my side of things is not just the playing at elite level, it's the coaching at elite level, but it's also the grassroots game, grassroots playing and coaching and refereeing. It's like the whole picture. So you don't want to just spend loads of money on players, because if you've not got the right coaches around to make them better, what's the point? If you've not got opposition around to make them better, what's the point? So it's just that investing in the whole picture, and a lot of it for me comes down to grassroots and who you've got coming through, because like I say, 27 is still a few years away. All sorts could happen in that time, and you'd hope that there'd even be players who are maybe not playing for their home nation now that will be on that tour, and there's no way that they're going to go, nah, it's going to be England dominated. I'm just like not going to go training tonight. Like this, it's not going to happen.
Who is your? I'm not going to ask for a starting 15 right now, because we probably should think about wrapping up soon. But if you were to pick a touring captain right now for 2027, who would it be?
I'm going to be slightly biased, and we've already mentioned her name, but Sadia Kebaya. because she is the next, for me, the next generation of player, and she is a younger one now. So come 27, she'll have a couple more years international experience behind her. But she did get to captain England for a bit when Mali went off during the Six Nations. But she's also the type of person, like she's not set in her ways, and it's like rugby in the good old days, or this is how it used to be, and so this is how it's supposed to be. I can imagine her being very much a type of captain who allows other people to thrive and will get off on being that person who lets other people be themselves. And like you say you don't have many Irish people in the team, like she'll be the one to make them feel like this is their they're not just a couple of Irish players in an English environment. Actually, this is a British and Irish Lions environment. You are needed, you're wanted, and you will be involved.
Do you think she'd have to get a few games for England as skipper under her belt to be able to do that, or just throw her straight in regardless?
Not necessarily. Nah, be wild, be brave, be lions. Could just throw in the trump card. But I think she will, to be a, like I say, Mitch has already given her that job, a little taste of it.
Yeah.
But it's just like what is a good captain? It's you get in there and learn it. You can't really learn it until you do it. So just get in there, embrace it, and enjoy the change.
Chewy, on the men's side, when was the last Lions tour captain who wasn't a captain for their nation?
Possibly Martin Johnson.
Yeah.
Because Lawrence was captain at that time. Was Paul O'Connell captain of Ireland in 09 or I can't remember with Paul, but it's but Johnson was certainly a case in point.
Yeah.
And actually talking about relatively young and inexperienced captains in the Lions context, I mean Sam Warburton was not the most experienced captain ever when he led the squad in 2013. And it turned out to be a pretty good call. A very good call indeed. So sorry?
It's like having a fresh take on things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I mean captaincy is interesting. You can go a thousand different ways, but it's in the Lions context as well. I do think that the old thing about the senior player group is very important, and it's you just need a group A who have got who are mature enough as rugby players. Whether they've had captaincy experience or not is irrelevant almost. It's just whether they're mature enough as sports people to be able to contribute in that environment. And actually, you just need a representation, not by nationality, but just a representative group from the squad who can come up with one voice and talk pretty loudly to. I mean, it's a race against time, Lions. Men, the women will find the same when it comes together. Depending on what kind of format the women's Lions have, but you're going to be pulling together an awful lot of different strands very quickly. Men's Lions tours are down to 8 matches now. So it's not the old days of growing the side in real time and letting people play their way into form and coming up on the blind side to pinch a test space, which is what happened in 97 with Tom Smith and Paul Wallace and Jeremy Davis and people like that. Nobody gave them a cat's open ever playing in the test side at the start of the tour, but then there were 7 or 8 games before the first test for them to catch the eye. That's not the position anymore. Everything's done against the clock now, and it's tough.
It'll be. I do wonder as well if when the women's tour gets going, because obviously we said on this podcast many times, the men's tour in 2021 was obviously COVID played a massive part, but it was a non-event. And I do wonder whether the men's tour will end up learning something from the women's tour in not bringing back the Lions. Obviously, we'll see how the Australia tour goes. But if the Australia tour falls a little bit flat as well, then you might have to think about changing up the format. Shaunagh, your idea about having a bunch of different nations play against the Lions might actually add a little bit of spruce to it and things like that. Yeah. So that might be interesting to see.
We need to be opening things out, don't we? I mean, the idea that the old traditional close shop, I think, is gone. There's going to be massive strains on the Six Nations just to broaden itself out a little bit, because pretty quickly you're going to find a situation where your Georgias or your Portugals, teams at that level, they have nowhere to go now. especially with the Nations Championship, the new Nations Championship. They have nowhere to go. The Six Nations is privately owned, privately run for Six Nations. And that's it. They're not interested in anyone else. And I'm not sure that's a sustainable position. If you're looking to grow the game, you've got to grow it properly. And it will be the same in the women's game, but the women's game is far more open to that growth. It's the lack of growth internationally that's affecting the women's game because, there aren't that many strong sides in the world. So the women's game is absolutely open to growth. There's big elements in the men's game, which is resistance to growth, and they will find themselves on the wrong side of history fairly quickly, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. Shaunagh, do you think very quickly the women's game is helped by, obviously, women's sport faces obstacles to get over in a way that men's sport doesn't? Do you think women's rugby is helped in a way in that respect because it's let's do whatever we can to grow the women's game, whereas you can't say that the men's game is doing that at the moment?
Yeah, I think you talk about like someone who's in marketing, if they're in football and they're selling out stadiums of 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 every week, and that looks great, but really you go, that's not a difficult job. To sell out football stadium at an elite level is not difficult. If you back yourself, you bring yourself into a women's sports environment, whether women's rugby, and you go from selling 800 tickets a week to 2,000 tickets a week, that means you're really good at your job. So it's getting people, and you do have to work for that. Is their tickets are not going to sell themselves. You do have to have ideas, have a bit of fresh thinking, bringing new people in, bringing different sports in, like different aspects, different perspectives in, and that. Because right now, like you say, the women's rugby is just crying out for growth. And so many ideas are being welcomed and actively being welcomed, whether it be by England Rugby or from the Prem teams themselves. They're actively seeking new ways of growing. And like you said, because the model in the men's game doesn't work to be replicated in the women's. We've now established that, especially around the Six Nations. It happened by accident because of COVID that we get our own Six Nations window. It's now stuck because it's been the best thing ever for the countries. But it's being able to, like, people are encouraged to think differently, do things differently, and it seems to be working. And like I say, it also brings people into rugby who are not in before, because they're like, oh, this is just selling a product, really. And the product might be rugby, but if you can sell a product, you can sell a product. So come into rugby, bring your fresh ideas. Like, let's make it happen. Let's do it differently.
Even things like, I don't know, Sophie Ellis-Bextor.
Yeah.
Like that. Oh, you're right.
Yeah. I've got, that's my next call coming in. I'll have to.
Fine. Well, we'll wrap up there. But things like that put bums in seats.
That wasn't a Burner Boy tune, was it?
No, standard iPhone tune, which normally on silent, but because it phoned on my computer, it comes with a boring one.
Chewy's still got the Nokia brick, so he doesn't know what a standard iPhone sounds like. Right, Shaunagh, get going. Sorry for keeping you a little bit longer than maybe anticipated, but I was just really enjoying the conversation, to be honest. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and
no problem.
We'll end up doing something really, really interesting before we know it. So we all look forward to seeing what that is.
Lovely, wicked. Nice speaking, Ollie.
Nice speaking to you, Shaunagh. Work on the bowling.
All right, I'm on it.
Good.
Thanks so much, Shaunagh. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.